But if you move forward as friends and allies, then it definitely does not have to impact our future. And I'd also like to take some time to just let you know that we are a Black-led organization in Durham region, and we acknowledge the experiences of racism and trauma that has impacted our community. We'd like to acknowledge our ancestors who forced into slavery and who were forced to build North America without compensation. I'd like to acknowledge our ancestors who fought for freedom, equal rights and pay, the right to vote, to partake in society, and to feel safe in the homes and in communities. And we'd also like to acknowledge that Canada has denied these rights repeatedly. And also this month is Black History Month. We know that we don't need a month to celebrate our identity, but I'd just like to give special attention to the trailblazers, our ancestors, our aunties and uncles, our moms and dads for shaping and modeling us. At Kajenga, we are creating history. We are thankful for your support for our organization over the past couple of months, and we'll always strive to support our community so that our community can succeed, which is why we have these series, Building Generation Wealth, and other workshop series that we've held over the last couple of months. We as an organization always will promise to create space for your ideas and just provide opportunities for you to succeed. So I believe as you succeed, we also succeed, and we're here to help and support our community in many ways. So today I'm going to skip through. We are proudly funded by the Ontario Children Foundation, and we work closely with Carrier Community Health Centre, which is a health center organization located in Durham region as well. We have some priority needs that we focus on, and I'd like to share these with you as we also think about Black History Month and how our experiences of Black people are impacted. So we are focused on addressing and supporting, verifying, and addressing systemic racism, which exists within child welfare, the education system, and the criminal justice system. We also want to support families impacted by community violence, whether it is gangs or being in unsafe neighborhoods, or also interpersonal family violence that also occurs within our community. We would like to support adults who are feeling hopeless during this special time of year, February. It's also the time where, issues such as seasonal affective disorder and other challenges impact people's lives. And so we like to create spaces to build connection with others in our community. We also are hoping to address mental health concerns that stem from intergenerational trauma or grief and loss. And definitely with the COVID experience, it has definitely shifted ourselves in so many different ways. And then finally, community members who are impacted by financial stressors and income barriers, which is why we bring this series to you as a way of helping and supporting you to, gain some financial knowledge and experience. So our key goals are promoting healthier families by having these educational workshops. We're currently building a navigation system line that would help connect you with resources within the community or any resources that we can provide as an agency, as well as we have support groups and counseling available for you as well. February is a very, very busy month for us, and we hope that you can attend all of our events this month. We have a mental health tune-up workshop coming next week. We have a historical race, deconstructing race and talking about historical discussion in a couple of weeks. We're also planning another co-parenting workshop as well for those who are parenting with other people. We also have an amazing series coming up next week for our Lex Talk called Black Love, which will be held on Wednesday, February the 9th. And finally, I'm very proud to announce that we're hosting a Black History Showcase on Friday, February the 25th. I think I have the date wrong. Friday, February the 26th, sorry. And I look forward to seeing everyone out. We have hopefully an amazing group of performers who will be with us that night. Our presenter today.
All right, so I would love to introduce our presenter for today. Um, Diana Myrie is a registered retirement consultant with the Canadian Institute of Financial Planners and a managing partner at Eau Claire Partners Incorporated. And she's a licensed financial advisor in Ontario with over 13 years of experience in insurance and banking combined. She's also a certified life coach, motivational speaker, and writer who is a published best-selling author of Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance, Your Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom. Diana has written articles for a variety of local and international magazines and other publications. She has a BA in English and a master's degree in science in labor and employment relations, and a member of the Niagara chapter of the Human Resources Professionals Association, the largest HR association in Canada. Diana is also a director of the board at Suitcase and Point Theatre Company, located in St. Catharines, Ontario. She's the creator, host, and producer of her own talk show, Conversations with Diana, where she shares inspiring real-life stories of real people who have made a significant impact in their communities. Passionate about helping to empower individuals and the wider community, you will find her volunteering at numerous events. She is married with 4 daughters and calls St. Catharines, Ontario, her home. I'm so excited to introduce her to everyone. She has a great lineup of topics and discussion for tonight. So grab your pen, get comfortable, and without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Diana.
Thank you very much, Jasmine, for that awesome introduction. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited to be delivering today's topic. And let me just share my screen here. So today's topic that I'll be presenting on is how to jumpstart your financial health in 2021, overcome lack, and have greater financial freedom. This is a heavy topic because for a lot of people, finances is just something that either they don't understand or they feel overwhelmed. They're either struggling to pay their bills, or as everyone has been saying of late, COVID-19 has really put a lot of people through the ringer. So I'm really excited to be talking about it, especially during Black History Month, because I think it's about time that we as a people come together and try to figure out how we can change the narrative so that, or we leave a lasting legacy for future generations. Some of the highlights of my discussion tonight will be as follows. I'll be looking at financial health and how it relates to us as individuals and as a group. I'll be going through a financial health checklist, so to speak, so that you can know pretty much for yourself if you need help or what areas to pinpoint. Just like you go for a regular health checkup, I believe everyone should have a financial checkup. I'll be looking at some tips on how we can manage debt and what the difference is with credit and having a credit report. That's an area that sometimes people tend to not pay attention to. So I wanted to give a little bit of insight into those 2 areas. I'll also be talking about saving for emergencies, especially on a tight budget, and how we can save for future education. So I'll be talking about RESPs and how we can set aside some funds for making sure that we continue to educate ourselves, and through education we can empower ourselves to be better motivated to get the career of our dreams, and also to be in a position where we are not struggling. I'll talk about some strategies that we can use to protect our income, and leave a lasting legacy. And I'll wrap up with a Q&A session. I just want to point out that I've asked Jasmine to keep an eye out for any questions, like burning questions. And I'll pause from time to time to ask if anyone needs clarification on anything, or if you have questions about what I'll be discussing. And then we'll wrap up. I think this is a great place to have an icebreaker. I thought it would be really nice to share some insightful statistics. The first statistic I thought, which was very, very interesting, was that 90% of Canadians say that money has an effect on their stress. Are pretty, not just because of COVID, but the whole thing about not being able to necessarily find the right job to suit your particular area of expertise. And not only that, but things are really at a point where persons are starting to recognize things, and I won't be able to necessarily have the type of lifestyle that I dream of. So a lot of people are pretty stressed out right now, and finance is the main stressor. The average monthly saving, this is what I thought very, very interesting as well, was that most Canadians save $160 or 5% of their monthly income. And that obviously means that we need to really take stock of why this is happening. Is it that we're not focusing enough on saving? Is it because we really feel stretched and we're not managing our money right? So those are some of the issues I'll be tackling during the discussion. 39% of persons under the age of 65 are struggling to save, whereas 22% of persons over the age of 65 are struggling to save. So it shows that the young people are the ones who have more of a challenge saving, and we want to look at why that is. And 30% of employees don't have a written financial plan. So that is worrying to me, because without a plan, you know what they say, you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So we really want to ensure that everyone having a financial health checkup is very important. Why? Because it helps you to recognize where you need to focus on. It helps you to determine what it is that is going wrong. And in order to do that, you need someone like myself, who's a financial advisor, to sit down with you and figure out what is happening. Just like you go to a physician for your regular checkups, hopefully, you would want to go to your financial advisor to see, or to lay out a roadmap. Okay, this is what I would like to achieve. I have X time to do it. How can I get there? Or how can you help me to get there? So we want to focus on budgeting tips, things like how to spend less than your income. A lot of persons tend to spend more than what they make. And obviously this is a recipe for disaster. So we want to really focus on making a budget. Having a budget is crucial towards ensuring that you keep on track with your expenses and make sure that you're not spending more than you're making. So that is very, very important to note. If it's a case where you're the type of person, because I know a lot of people, I've come across a lot of people who will say, no matter how hard I try, I just can't seem to save enough. Something always comes up. There's always some bill. There's always something. I can't seem to save. How can you help me? And there are times when you really can't see, you work with a person, you can't really see how they can really cut back anymore, because I've really met some people who they're very deliberate in their savings. They have a strategy. Okay, I'm only going to spend X amount on food. I'm only going to spend X amount on bills. I cut back, and I still cannot save. What do you tell people like that? And sometimes you just have to look at them and say, well, obviously you're doing everything that you can. So let's look at your sources of income. So I'll be talking about how we can move from a system where we're only thinking about getting a job, one job, to a point where we are thinking, okay, I need to have multiple streams of income. It's either I'm going to get a second job, or I'm going to try and develop a skill so that I can get to a point where I can be working, whether it be part-time or full-time, but continue to have some income coming in because I have a particular skill in this area. Maybe you can teach part-time or tutor part-time, whereas a person who finds that they're passionate about baking, they can be part-time. And you'd be surprised, a lot of persons, especially during COVID, have found that they have had a zest for, you know, certain things that they didn't necessarily feel the need to pursue, but because of COVID-19, they're now forced to be at home and to think and ponder on how am I going to get to a point where I become self-sufficient. And they realize that, hey, I'm really doing really well at this, and I can see where if I just, you know, focus on this area, I can make a lot more money than if I was staying at my full-time job where I hated anyway. So it's just a matter of being creative. So sometimes you have to think long and hard. Is this particular job that you're slaving away at for years really, is it the way for you to go? Or do you need to maybe go back to school, train to get a new skill, or have a different career so that you can make the type of money that you're not in a situation where you're trying to cut back and you can't cut back anymore. So things like that, I want persons to start thinking about, you know, how can I get to a point where I can significantly increase my income so that it's not a case where I'm always playing catch up or I'm living paycheck to paycheck. You also want to consider, do you have enough sufficient long-term savings and assets? So a lot of Black persons, Black people or people of color, do not necessarily focus specifically on building assets. And maybe it's because of not having the right tools or the right information. And now I find a lot more people are becoming more savvy, doing things like trading and researching certain topics that before maybe their parents never really thought of doing. So I think certain things like having an RRSP, for instance, having a tax-free savings account, having mutual funds, having real estate. I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day, and he's a young person, and he was saying, you know, I'm focusing on getting my second home. And I thought, here is a young person who is really focused on building asset. He recognizes that in order to get wealth and to leave a lasting legacy for his future, for his children, he needs to focus on building assets and not on building liabilities. Because at the end of the day, wealthy people know that they have to focus on the balance sheet. I think it was Robert Kiyosaki that spoke about in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that wealthy people tend to focus on more assets as opposed to more liabilities, whereas persons who tend to maintain poverty or have a poverty mindset tend to focus on, I need to get a job and I need to pay off my bills. You know, their focus is on building assets. So that's where I come in. I sit down with you and I help you to figure out, okay, if this is the right type of strategy for you. Do you need a RSP, or do you need a TFSA, or do you need both? I sit down with you to and enable you to see long term and not short term. We need to focus on borrowing wisely, because there's something called bad debt and good debt, and I'll talk about that a little later in our discussion. And borrowing wisely just simply means having a sustainable debt load. Usually the banks look for anywhere between 35 and 40% of your income. Now, if your debt ratio is higher than that, then they tend to turn you down for loans. So what that means is you need to be able to figure out, okay, is this something that I really need to take on at this time? Because if I do, will it increase my debt load, or will it make my debt load lower? So those are things we need to sit down and figure out, especially if you're looking to borrow. You have to determine, is this going to work out for you in the long run? I know a lot of times people don't necessarily have a choice. They get into situations, and I'm not saying, I'm a realistic person. I know things happen. You know, even the best laid plans sometimes fail because of unexpected circumstances. But that is where we need to get to a point where we can be prepared for these eventualities like sickness, disabilities, things like that. So those are things I'll be talking about later as well. But getting to a point on your financial health checklist, you want to look at, am I borrowing wisely? Look at the type of debts you tend to create. Is it consumer debt or is it good debt? If you're borrowing to, say, pay for a home, purchase of a home, that's good debt. If you're borrowing to, say, buy a pair of shoes, go on a trip, use your credit card as a result, that's bad debt. You're actually, unless you're the type of person that pays off the balance, you need to focus on borrowing wisely. And last but not least, planning ahead, and I kind of touched on that earlier, for unexpected expenses, things like having an emergency fund. Part of a good financial strategy or plan is to ensure that you're putting aside something for the proverbial rainy day. So that is, in a nutshell, what a financial health checkup tends to uncover and determine. Okay, if there's one thing in this particular list that you don't have, or you're not doing well at, there's no shame in it. Just recognize that there are persons out there that can help you to get back on track. Or if you're just starting out, you just started your first job and you want to make sure that you do things the right way, these are some of the tips that I would recommend you following in order to have a good financial outlook. Okay, second here. I'm just going to pause because I think I said a lot. Are there any questions, Jasmine, from the audience, or any clarifications needed on anything I said?
No questions so far.
Mhm.
Okay, hopefully that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is. I think my feedback was absolutely makes so much sense. And I like how you shared around it's important to save, but also things happen and we need to look at multiple streams of income. So that really struck with me.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just bear with me 1 second. I think I have a little issue here with my slides. I just want to make sure I'm not jumping ahead here. So I had touched on briefly having a tax-free savings account as opposed to an RRSP. Now, a tax-free savings account is, as the name suggests, is an account, a registered account where you can grow your savings tax-free. That is, any interest earned is not taxed. And if you withdraw from it, it's not taxed. So it's really beneficial. Actually, something that I recommend everyone should have. If you don't already have one, you should try and get one, because it is one way in which you can really significantly save. Because especially if you're an aggressive saver, you use something called compounding. Compounding simply means that over time your funds grow very fast, and the longer you leave things in, is the greater the value will be, and you're protecting yourself against inflation too. So you want to make sure that you're keeping ahead of inflation by putting your money into investments that would pretty much be more than what the inflation rate is. So anything above, I would say 3%, 4% would stand you in good stead. I'm not necessarily putting one investment over another. The investments I'm speaking of are things like mutual funds, things like segregated funds. Segregated funds are sold by insurance companies, and that's a whole other topic. I probably would have to go into greater detail at another time, but there are certain type of funds that provide guarantees, that mutual funds, for instance, if persons tend to lean towards mutual funds, they give certain guarantees that mutual funds can't give. And there's a guaranteed death benefit, so that if you die, God forbid you die, then your principal isn't lost, meaning the amount you contributed or you invested is not lost. All right, so there are certain instances where persons may say, well, okay, what makes me, why should I choose a tax-free savings account, or why should I choose an RRSP? And by the way, an RRSP is simple for those persons who don't know. Registered Retirement Savings Plan is there to help you grow your savings for retirement. And you have two types. You have the individual type, and you have the group ones where you can get through your employer. The individual one, you can go to a financial institution. You can come to me as a broker, and I can help you set that up. So for persons who may be wondering, well, I don't want a registered retirement savings plan, I don't see the point. That's something that's floated about quite a bit. And I think it's because a lot of people don't necessarily know. They hear somebody say something and they jump on it and say, okay, well, I'm not going to get one because I heard that it's not good. There are certain instances where an RSP makes sense and where a tax-free savings account makes sense. So in the case of a tax-free savings account, if you're over the age of 71, for instance, and you have maxed out not maxed out, you're over the age of 71. Being over the age of 71, you cannot have an RSP. If that's the first time you're going to set one up, it would not be recommended. So at that point, you do set up a tax-free savings account. I don't know if there's anyone on the program who is over 71, but for anyone who is under 71, then if you are looking to set up an account, you can either take a tax-free savings account or an RRSP. In the case of someone who is under 71 who wants to know, well, does it make sense for me? Your income plays a factor. So if you're in a high income bracket, you tend to pay a higher, what we call marginal tax rate. Usually over 25-30% is considered the income where it is recommended you get a registered retirement savings plan, because as a result of opening one and putting funds in, you have something called your contribution limit, which is normally ascertained by looking at your notice of assessment. So you have to satisfy the condition of being employed, you have to have employment income, and you have to have filed a tax return. So once you satisfy those two criteria, then you would look at, okay, so my income is a certain amount. I don't want to be hit come tax time with a high tax bill. I want to be able to reduce my tax liability. And therefore, as a result of putting in a certain contribution based on what's on my notice of assessment, then I will be able to get back some money either through my refund and put that in again, invest it and keep growing the RSP, or I could, if I don't have the money, because a lot of persons don't necessarily have enough money to contribute up to the limit, you can take out something called an RRSP loan. And that's another topic for another time. I'm trying to see if I can slow down a bit because I don't want to rush ahead. Let me just see. Right, in terms of having RSP contribution room, if you don't have enough RSP contribution room, you can look at things like getting an RSP loan, which I can help you with to help you get out of debt. There are certain things that it can do. It can help you get out of debt. It can help you with increasing your investments through something called leveraging. And what leveraging does is just borrowing to invest. So by borrowing, you get a loan. And once you use that loan, you can put it back into the RSP, get a refund, and you can use some of that refund to pay off the loan and also to pay off any debt you may have. It's an interesting way in which some people have been able to get out of debt or pay for things that they need. So that's something, if you want to know more about, you can send me a direct message or you can email me. I'll have my contact information later on in the discussion. For persons who are in a lower income bracket, it means then that it may not be the RSP may not be right for you because you're not going to necessarily benefit from it. It's really to help persons who are in a higher income bracket to save and on their taxes, and also to be able to gosh, I just lost my thought. It's good for persons who are in a higher income bracket to save on their taxes and to be able to, it's tax deductible, the contributions that they make. Whereas for persons in a lower income bracket, it might be more useful for them to have a tax-free savings account. And whatever you put in that tax-free savings account is pretty much yours. You can take it anytime. Whereas with an RSP, yes, you can take it, but guess what? You're going to be hit with a penalty. Depending on how much you take, it could be as much as 30% or as low as 25%. But that's a hard hit. You work so hard to save that money, so you just don't want to take it out before it's really necessary. But it doesn't mean you can't access it. Now, there are instances where you can take from it tax-free. The instances are paying for your, you want to purchase your first home through the home buyer's plan. You can use your RSP for that. So it might make sense for you to take out an RSP and save within that vehicle to down the road to purchase your first home. You can also use it to pay for what we call furthering your education through a lifelong learning plan. And what that does, it allows you to take out a certain percentage, whether you or your spouse, towards your future education. I know education is one of the things that people can use to empower themselves. And that's one of the ways in which I say to people, you have an RSP, there's funds in there, and you might be wondering, you want to go back and learn, you want to go back and advance yourself and get more qualified. That's one of the ways to do that. One caveat is that you must remember that with the home buyer's plan and with the lifelong learning plan, it is sort of like a loan, so you have to pay it back. Is your savings going to be used for retirement? So sometimes when people want to know, should I take out an RSP or should I take out a TFSA? Chances are, if you really want to save for retirement, you should consider, and you have the characteristics that I mentioned before, then it makes sense to take out an RSP because it's really there for retirement purposes. Not to say there are not other ways you can save for retirement, but that's one of the major ways. And I think I addressed the whole aspect of if your income is high, then that would be the right plan for you, the RRSP. Otherwise, it's a tax-free savings account. Any questions on that? I think I said a whole lot there, so I just wanted to pause in case there were any questions. Okay.
Yes, actually, I'm just wondering if you can clarify how old someone needs to be for the Life Learner loan. Is there any way that you could give an example or clarify that for our viewers?
As far as I'm aware, I don't think there's any specific age limit. I speak under correction, but no. So for instance, someone who, say in their 40s, who wants to go back to school, and for whatever reason, you would have been saving quite a bit towards your RSP. You might be there saying, well, how am I going to go back to school? I don't want to take out a loan from OSAP, for instance. And obviously that may not be, even though there are grants available, the type of program you want to do may be something that you don't necessarily want to take out a loan and pay back interest. The lifelong learning plan is another option that you can use. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I don't think there's an age limit per se.
Yeah, that definitely answers the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have another question as well.
Sure.
Is the RRSP taxed?
Yes, it is. No, it's not taxed. The funds that go into the RRSP, they're tax deferred. So the only time you're taxed is if you take the money out, whether it be for retirement purposes or, like I said, if you decide that, you have an emergency and things happen, right? Things sometimes happen. And it's not to say you can't take the money out. It's just that there's a penalty. So for instance, anything under $5,000 is taxed at 25%. If it's between 5,001 and 15,000 or 14,999, it's 30% and so forth. So the more you take out at once, it's the more you're taxed. It's only in the instances I mentioned before where it's not taxed, for the home buyer's plan and for the lifelong learning plan.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Diana.
You're welcome.
We do have one more question. I hope I'm reading it correctly. What is the best asset class if you have $20,000 in savings?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And I am not going to answer it no, meaning reason being it all depends on the person's risk tolerance and the person's time horizon. We look at things like that. So we don't just say, just throw out there, okay, this is the best, is best going to equities, bonds, stock, whatever. It's best to sit down with a person and get all the information that is required. You would fill out something called an investor profile, and that gives us a great sense. There's a series of questions that determines, okay, if you're the type of investor that we need to put into certain types of investment funds, then for sure we can discuss what's the best type, because then I would be able to look at historical data, things that are found in the fund facts of the particular fund that we're looking at. And we can research different companies to see, okay, how this company is doing. The market is pretty volatile right now too. So that's why we really want to tread carefully when putting out information like that, because it all depends on the person's risk tolerance and for instance, their income. If they have play money, so to speak, money to play with, there are persons out there who have play money, what we call money that you can afford to lose, then we can talk about more aggressive things. But again, it depends. So that person can always reach out to me. I'd be happy to sit down with them and formulate a strategy and answer that question, hopefully.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Right, so moving right along. Thank you for those questions. They were great, by the way. I like to keep it 100%. So there's a saying I came across on the internet, somebody by the name of G. Brian Davis said, improve financial health. And if you don't pay attention to your money, or if you don't take the time to study money and how it works and how it can work for you, then guess what? You're always going to be trying to chase money. Money won't chase you. So I like to think of, if I want to make lots of money, I have to really study money, study finances, put myself in good stead to be able to have of it. So I think this is a great quote. I don't know if anyone agrees, but I just thought, what a hilarious quote. If you don't take care of your teeth, you will lose it. So it's the same with money. You have to really work hard, and it's a process. You have your moments where things hit you. You may have an unexpected, the family, somebody fell ill, COVID, there are things that can happen, but if you really put things in place like I've outlining shortly, it makes you more prepared and it puts you in a better position so that when these things happen, you're like laughing, you're like, oh wow, I'm good. I don't have to touch my savings, because guess what? I had a critical illness plan that I set up. I had a disability illness package that I just, and it's a great thing I did that, because now I can rest easy. I can focus on getting well, and obviously it's not everything you can plan for, but for the most part, if you do put things in place from early. And I always like to give people the sense that, there's always hope. As I've worked with clients over the years, and I've seen people who barely had 2 cents to rub with, and they were able to systematically get to a point where they can look back and say, oh my gosh, I came a far way. I was able to purchase my home. Some of them will say they purchased it cash too. You'd be surprised to hear some of the stories I've come across over the years, where it doesn't really matter as long as you start somewhere. My dad always used to say, if you get $1, save 10 cents out of it. Try and put aside something, no matter how small. So what are some of the benefits of having good financial health? I think some obvious benefits are better quality of life, meaning you have less stress and anxiety. As we said earlier before, statistics show that over 90% of Canadians are stressed, and the main stress for 90% of Canadians is financial stress. So if we can get to a point where we're not as stressed about finances, and we tend to be heavily indebted, Canadians and North Americans on a whole are heavily indebted, and maybe that's part of the reason why we're anxious all the time. It would help to kind of get us back to a place where we have more peace of mind. Sometimes a person walks into my office and they feel so stressed out because guess what? I am totally drowning in debt. I don't know where to begin. I don't know where to start. And just by sitting down and talking about the problem and say, let's just be transparent, what's going on, what are you doing that is causing you to get into debt, and having a conversation, a frank and open discussion, you realize that, it's just something that the person just needs to tweak. Sometimes they need additional assistance that I can't offer, but I can put them in contact with someone like that can give them like for instance, something that is not as bad as bankruptcy. I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. So there are times when you have to do that, but for there are some persons who can get something called a consumer proposal, for instance, and that can put them in a better cash flow position where, yes, it may mean maybe a couple years to get to a point where they can get a better credit report. But I think it's better to be in a position where you're not as stressed, because a lot of people do this and they realize that they freed up a lot of cash that they can now use towards savings and investing. So that's something I can speak more on. I can refer persons to companies that can help them to streamline things so that they can breathe a little easier. In some cases, you can cut back debt, like someone who had, say, $80,000 could negotiate and cut your debt down to $25,000 and then work out a payment package stretch it out over a long period of time so that you are not spending so much money. It's like you're just earning to spend, meaning earning to pay out bills. So that's one of the things that I talk about. Once you get to a point where you're like more comfortable, your anxiety is lowered and you have better relationships, you have a greater peace of mind. And you know what, if you're at work and you're always thinking about, okay, how am I going to buy this? How am I going to pay for this? It can really, if you don't check it, it can really affect your productivity. So things like increased productivity, having better control of your finances tends to make you feel more happier and more together and more productive. It allows you to have better financial positions. So for instance, you have access to greater credit limits, which if you use them wisely, they can really work for you as opposed to against you. You have access to lower interest rates for loans, certain mortgages. You hear about some people who have great credit that they have really little or no interest when it comes to taking out certain loans, whereas persons who don't necessarily have that great credit, they are paying a lot larger, have a bit higher interest rate than their financial institution. So just overall, it makes sense. It's just something that it takes work. If you made some mistakes and you've gotten to a point where things are really out of hand, because I know a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to get from, and it only means just taking the time out to pick up the phone or send an email or send a message and say, listen, can you look at my situation? Let's see what we can do for you. There's always a way. Barriers to good financial wellness. So what can prevent you being financially healthy? Things like overspending, I think it's self-explanatory, like spending more than you earn, always perpetually paying things late, and sometimes it's just things happen and you just didn't realize that the bill was due. But if you make it a habit, then it obviously impacts your credit, and that is not a good place to be in. Not having a financial, like I said, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. You really want to start by making a in my book, I talk about it. I wrote a book. I'm with them was having a plan and trying to stick with a plan. And no plan is what's the word I'm looking for? It's not setting in stone. It should be flexible. So if your plan is to take out this money, I don't want to touch it, right? Sometimes you're your own worst enemy. So sometimes you have to be realistic and say, okay, you know what? I'm not a good saver. Can you help me out? Maybe put it in something that I can't touch, because if I know I can't touch it, then a year from now, when I'm really ready for, like I had a goal, you ask the person, do you have a specific goal in mind? If the goal is, let's say, to buy a car, yeah, my goal is to save for a car in 2 years, and you put it in something that they can't touch, meaning they can put money in, but they can't have ready access to it. You'll be surprised. The person will come back to you 24 months later or a year later and say, I can't believe it. I have all this money. If I had access to it, I would have blown it. So sometimes you have to get help if you know that you have a poor savings habit. And sometimes it's not as easy as that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's always going to be easy. Sometimes it means having to, I read this in a book the other day, maybe about a year or so ago, where sometimes it's a mental thing. There's just some people who have, and when I say a mental thing, I'm no disrespect, I'm just trying to put it in the right words. Sometimes it's a state of mind. So there are people out there who are like chronic shopaholics, like they're shopaholics, or they have a gambling issue. That's what I mean. It's like a mental illness. And not until they get therapy, and this person explored it in their book. Can't remember the name of the author right now, but if I do, I can provide the information. And they recognize that there are just some people that no matter how they try, unless they seek professional help, like from a psychologist or a psychiatrist, then they will never ever have enough money, because money just passes through their fingers. So it's not a case where a fix, like sitting down with a financial advisor, may help that person, because you wonder, well, why is it that they can't save? They make good money, they have all the tools at their disposal, but then when you really check it out, they're always, playing, they're always at the casino, whatever the case may be, or they're all, on clothes, or, whatever the case may be. So I'm just saying that sometimes it's about the poor saving habits may be linked to something else, but the main thing is they're not saving. So the whole key is to save. And if it is a case where you really have a significant, you're an issue that you can't seem to get rid of, then you can really face the music and get some professional help. And it's just something that I read about, and I thought that was really interesting to note. I think I mentioned it in my book as well. I made mention of who said it, and how, and what they thought, what the person had to do in order to rectify the situation. But I don't want to spend too much time on that. But just to let you know that there's sometimes it's out of your control, but majority of the time, I would say 90% of the time, it's within your control. Lack of timely and relevant information, because as we know, you're only as good as the information you have. And unfortunately for Black people, we haven't had access to great information, or information that relates to finances. Is now starting, I think, and it's going to take some time, but more people are becoming more aware, or going out there and deliberately looking for information. And hopefully, I believe it should be, I think it's being adopted in schools now, where they have a course, a financial literacy course. So I think starting from as young as possible, teaching your children about the importance of savings. I talk about that in my book as well. Giving them that, piggy bank, or opening an account for them and taking them to the bank and letting them see, well, hey, I'm going to give you $5 and we're going to put it out towards, maybe something like something important, and train them from early. And you would be surprised how that child turns into an adult that is, very, very financially stable and healthy. How to manage debt. Now, this is a very important topic, because a lot of people are quite frankly, faced with it. As I mentioned before, statistics show that we're heavily in debt. And so it's important to note good debt versus bad debt. And good debt is things like control, anything that is controlled, that is fixed. So like your mortgage, you have a fixed mortgage payment every week or bi-weekly or monthly. It could be something that you're putting towards an asset, whether another piece of property, or you're buying machinery to help in your business, for your business to increase in its revenue. Anything that is going to put you in a better financial position, building your assets and lowering your liabilities, that is something that is good debt. Now, if it's something that is going to put you in a liability position, put you in the red, so to speak, then it's a bad debt. So things like consumer goods, like credit cards, anything that you can't control, line of credit, anything that the payments are not necessarily fixed and you're not necessarily using it, because you could have a line of credit, but you're using it towards something that is going to bring you money, right? Like leveraging, for instance, investing. So I'm not necessarily speaking to line of credit as a bad thing and credit cards as a bad thing, because sometimes it depends on how you use it. Most times it's how you use it and what you use it for. And we all make mistakes, right? I'm not going to sit here and say I don't use my credit card to buy, certain things that, but at the end of the day, you recognize, okay, let me cut back. I need to either put away my card, or cut, in some cases, if you know you have an issue, you cut up your card. Years ago, I had, I went through a divorce, and I just maxed out my card. And I recognized that I needed to get to a point where I didn't have that as a vice anymore. I didn't have that as an excuse anymore. And I made a conscious decision that I'm going to not let myself be overpowered by this thing. And I sat down with my banker and I said, listen, I don't want to move forward with this hanging over my head. And I said to her, just cut it up. I don't want to have any credit cards. And I made a conscious decision not to use my credit card because I cut it up, and don't eat out. Sometimes you have to make some tough decisions. Don't eat out. I started carrying my lunch to work. If I did eat out, it would just be very, very rarely. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, to be honest, because it allowed me to really get to a point where I could safely say I got out of debt. And becoming that type of a person allowed me to recognize that I had a passion for helping people who got to that place to get out of it. So it's a personal thing for me. I'm very passionate about helping people succeed financially, and started writing articles and trying to help people to see that, it is something, sometimes it's just a small thing, cutting up that card, or deciding not to buy McDonald's every day or buy Starbucks 3 times a day, which I know some people do. I'm not judging anyone, but if you're really serious, I just got to a point where I want to get to a point where I'm not bogged down with this, and it really worked for me. So focus on getting good debt as opposed to getting bad debt. I hope that was helpful to anyone out there that may be listening and trying to figure out, well, how am I going to get this done? It can be done. You just have to be disciplined, right? So what is the difference between credit report and credit score? There is a difference, and is understanding these differences that will determine, okay, should I focus on X or should I focus on Y? So a credit report basically shows a history of all your credit activity and current credit. It includes public information from government entities and private companies. So everything is pretty much, your spending habits is being recorded, and it's being recorded on what we call a credit report. It shows late and missed payments. It also can show potential identity theft. So it's always good practice to at least do a credit check on yourself, or request a credit report, not credit check on yourself, request a credit report at least once a year. I believe you are entitled to a free report each year, once a year. And by doing that, you can see what is exactly on it, because if there's something that you don't identify as accurate, then the onus is on you to go and find out, well, can you get it off? Because I didn't make this payment, I didn't set up this facility, it shouldn't be there. And they will investigate, and if it is found to be that you were accurate and you were, being truthful, they will take it off, because it can come back to haunt you if you don't know that it's there, and you may be trying to get maybe a loan somewhere, and then you recognize, well, hey, I thought I had good credit, but they're telling me that there's something on my record. I've seen it happen so many times. It's not until the person recognizes that somebody probably stole their credit card, or somehow their identity got compromised. And with all the cybercrime we're hearing about, it is not unusual. I don't want to scare anybody, but things happen, right? So it's very important that you look at your credit report. Credit score now, on the other hand, is a grade. It comprises of 3 digits, and it shows you basically how you manage your credit. It shows other people how you manage credit. So it's from a scale of 300 to 850, 300 being the lowest, 850 being the highest, considered good credit. And it's determined by length of credit and the number of credit accounts and the balance and payment history. So rule of thumb is, if you have, say, a credit card, you should really try not to go past 50%, which is your utilization of the card, because if you go over a certain percentage, it tends to start impacting your credit score, right? And someone can have relatively good credit and their credit report is short because there's a history of late payments. You continuously miss, payment deadlines, or you carry a lot of high balances, which is why it's always good to see if you can pay off as much of that balance as possible. Keep it to a minimum if possible. If not, try not to go over 75%, because then it starts to impact your credit score. It's also used to approve or decline a credit facility. So your credit score can really significantly impact you in a good way if it's good, or in a bad way if it's bad. So you really want to keep on track with that. For persons who sometimes wonder, well, I have a good credit rating, relatively good credit rating, but I can't seem to get a certain interest rate, or I can't seem to get this loan. Why is that? It's because of your credit, what's on your credit report, chances are. So it's very important to recognize that you need to do periodic checks. And I know a lot of banks now are offering that service for free. If you have a mobile app or online banking, you just simply click on the credit score or the credit report check, and it will give you a rundown of what's on that report or what your score is. So it's much more easier. And for those who don't have access to that, you can request it from either TransUnion or Equifax. And what's the other one? I think those are the two main institutions that report or keep a track of your credit reports. I'm going to pause here and see if there are any further questions, because I think I said quite a bit. Or if anybody needs clarity on anything.
I do have a question. What would be some steps that individuals could take if they would like to boost their credit score?
Thanks for that question. That's a great question. Well, first things first, they can do things like try and try and cut down on the balance, try to reduce the balance. And it's strategic, right? So you could, instead of making the minimum payment, or which is just basically taking care of the interest, you're not really putting anything towards the principal. If you really want to seriously increase your credit score, you do things like try and make a little bit more than the minimum payment, or a lot more if you can. if you're going to be systematic and say, okay, I want to get out of debt by a certain time, you can't get there by just making the minimum payment. Just be realistic. If you can't do it, so be it. Meaning, if it's really crunch time, you don't really have the funds, and you can only make the minimum payment, that's better than nothing. But one of the first things you can do is try to start making more than the minimum payment, or simply try to find a way to pay off the card. Get, not necessarily close the card, because it depends on how long you had the card for. Speaking specifically about credit cards, if you had the card for, let's say, less than a year, doesn't make sense to close the card, because that can impact your credit score as well. Try to keep it for at least a year or so. And the longer you have a credit facility which you service well, it actually boosts your rating. Things like having a mortgage, opening a new facility. So I know of persons who, I know this is a strategy where you can, what we call, have another, oh my gosh, you can have another credit facility or extend your credit. So for instance, if you see that you have, let's say, a $5,000 card or $500 card, let's keep it simple. You have a $500 card and you're creeping up to the credit limit of $500. In order to boost your credit score, you can call your bank and say, well, I'd like to get, can you increase my limit to say maybe $1,000? But the aim is not to go back and try and max out the $1,000 card. The aim is to try and get to a place where you get it back down to zero being the minimum, and you will see an uptick in your credit score. It does take a while, because there's a little lag. It takes about 2 months to hit, but things like increasing your limits, that's a great way. Opening another facility. So let's say you only had one card and you get, say, another card, right? And I'm not encouraging people to go and get multiple cards out there, but if a person's who are managing their card well, pretty much, but they just want to see an increase in their credit score, and there's some tools that the banks give you. Don't know why I'm advertising the banks, but anyway, there's some tools that you're provided with that will help you to kind of navigate and see, well, okay, if I do this, meaning if I increase my credit limit here and maybe get rid of this particular debt here, then this is what my score will be. You can actually play around with the tools that will show you, okay, so if I just pay off this card and maybe get a line of credit, I can increase my score by 100 points. Things like that you can do. I know persons who will go out and get a mortgage and their credit score shoots up, because it's a new facility. It's one of the biggest debts you'll ever have, or one of the biggest things you'll ever purchase. So it is one of those things that can help boost your score. And there are lots of other things, but those are the main things that come to mind at the moment. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Diana. I think there is someone in the audience who would like a little bit of clarity on what you were talking about. I hope I understand the question correctly, but it does say, so to understand, under a year impacts your credit. After a year won't have an impact when you close a credit card?
Okay, so what I'm saying is, for someone who they look at how long you have the credit for. So if you're going to go around and, let's say, take out a credit card every month or every 6 months and then close it, that's going to seriously impact your credit, because it's going to show your credit history, or your credit report is going to show that you have a history of just closing facilities. If you're doing it just willy-nilly like that, right? You should keep it open for at least a year. I'm not saying to go and keep it open for a year and then close it. I'm saying for persons who maybe you found that card wasn't really the right card for you, if you close it before the year, it can impact your credit score. I'm not sure if they were asking the question that if they have it for over a year, does it impact your credit score? Is that what they're asking? Because if you have it for over a year, for instance, and you are not paying it properly, that can impact your credit score as well in a negative way. So the whole point is the longer you have it open for and you're servicing it well, your credit score will be positively impacted. But if you have it open for under a year and you then in a bad way, meaning you maxed out your card, then obviously it's going to impact your credit even more because one, you didn't service it well, you maxed it out, and you didn't pay off the debt. You closed it without pay, because you really shouldn't close a card unless it's a case where another company is paying off the card for you and they say, well, close a card. You're not leaving a balance on it. So I'm not talking about closing something before the year with a balance in it, because that's going to impact it even more. The point is to build your credit by having this facility open as long as possible. And if you don't owe anything on it, even better. I know of people who just keep a card just for the sake of making sure that their credit stays in a positive light, but they pay it off well. If they ever do use it, they don't keep a running balance. They always pay off their balance. So I hope that sheds some more light on it, or it's more clearer.
I think you might have answered their
I hope so, because I don't want to misguide anybody or mislead anybody. It really makes sense to keep it open as long as possible.
Yeah.
The whole point is to remember not to close it too early. You don't just take it out to close it after a month, because that's going to impact you.
Okay.
So that's why it's something you shouldn't go into lightly.
I think they do have a follow-up question, but I'm not sure if you answered it already.
Okay.
This attendee said, I have a couple of cards and they don't carry a balance. Will removing them or keeping them impact my score?
So the two cards, there are no balances on them.
Yes.
So if the two cards are clear and he's had the cards for more than a year, by closing them will not impact their credit. If you have the cards for less than a year and you close them and there's no balance on them, then it could impact, yes.
All right. Excellent. Thank you for that, Diana.
You're welcome. So moving right along, how am I doing for time? I'm seeing here. Okay, great. So saving for emergencies on a tight budget. Now, this is very, very crucial, because I know a lot of people it's hard enough to save much less on a tight budget, right? In my book, Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance, Your Ultimate Guide to Financial Freedom, I talk about this in, I have a specific chapter that I talk about how to save on a budget, a very tight budget. And the first point I make is start with a plan. Everything starts with a plan. If you set out to try and save for emergencies and you don't know how you're going to do it, or you don't have a strategy in place, then you'll find that it's not going to work for you. So for instance, using my case, I like to use myself as an example. When I was trying to save for emergencies, and I had a very tight budget back then, being a single mom and all, I decided that my plan was I was not going to eat out. I was going to just make sure I took my lunch to work every day and had sensible dinners. And because my strategy was to try and save a certain amount each week and put that in a specific account. I know that if I went against that plan, then guess what? I'd be back to square one. I wouldn't have saved. And one of the other strategies I did was to make sure I review it so that I can see, well, okay, this week went well, this week didn't go well because something unexpected happened. It happens, right? So that's why I talked about making sure you keep it flexible and having regular reviews, whether it be with yourself, like you look back and see, okay, look over your account, see what came out that shouldn't have. Always monitor your bank accounts, because guess what? A lot of times I found for myself personally and for clients that sometimes charges are coming off your account that is eating into your savings. When I say eating into your savings, sometimes you're being charged for things that you're not using, or just by making a tweak and maybe getting a better savings account, for instance, or a better type of account that wouldn't charge you, you wouldn't be paying certain charges for, let's say, giving an example, if you had a specific account that is going to charge you for debits, right? maybe it's best to switch to an unlimited account where you're not being charged. Because I know of people who save hundreds of dollars just by a simple practice of switching an account. So always keep track of that. So start with a plan. I started with a plan and I made sure I stuck to it. It was hard, but I was disciplined because I had a goal in mind. I wanted to save a certain amount by a certain time. And I immediately earmarked certain accounts for certain things. So that's what I talk about, having a plan. How am I going to do this? How am I going to keep on track? Right? There are certain things that I would have put my money in that I said, okay, I don't want it close to me. I know of people who do this too. They open an account like miles away from them because they don't want to have ready access to the account. So those are things that I would have done to make sure that I kept on track with my plan of saving for emergencies. One of the things that you can also utilize is setting up a specific emergency fund. That could be in the form of a tax-free savings account, for instance, because whatever you put in there is growing tax-free. And for me personally, I like to know that I can't touch it. So it's harder to get it if it's in a certain instruments. And when I say instruments, I'm talking about different investments. I don't want to really say too much on that because I don't want to influence anyone, because it's really an individual thing, and it takes sometimes a lot of guidance. And I don't want to say they heard me say, go and open this account and go and put this in that. I'm not going to do that tonight, but what I want to say is have a strategy and set up a specific account for emergencies. So the topic is saving for emergencies, and this account is earmarked for emergencies. So if, let's say, somebody came to you and, oh, do you have some money? I really need some money to borrow. It's not their emergencies for your emergency, right? If you take out of your emergency fund to lend somebody for their emergency, then what's going to be there when you have an emergency? You have to really be disciplined. And sometimes you have to be tough and just say, no, I'm saving for something, or they don't need to know what you're saving for. The whole point is you set aside that money for that particular purpose. You may have like a vacation account. You may have an account for play money, meaning, this is the account I'll use if I just want to go and, entertain myself, go to the movies or whatnot. It's all up to you. Set up a savings plan. Savings plan could be in the form of a particular investment, whether it be again, I don't really want to say what exactly, but it could be again, maybe an RRSP that's you're saving towards retirement. That's a savings plan. So earmark certain things. I want to save 50,000. I'm just throwing a number out there. Any number could be your number, and in order to strategically make sure you have certain amounts by a certain time, you sit down with your advisor. You can sit down with me, and we can use a specific tool to show you, okay, realistically at your age, if you really want to save, you say you have a dream of saving $500,000 by the time you retire, guess what? It's going to cost you X amount. Do you want to get there? You can get there. It might mean tweaking the amount, maybe try to either extend the length of time that you're going to be investing for or saving for, or increasing the deposit. But sometimes people will say, oh, I just want to put in at $20 or $50. Yeah, but you say you want to retire by 65 with $20, and you're starting at what age? Not trying to, I'm just trying to be real with you. Sometimes people have the money, but they just don't necessarily understand that if they really significantly want to reach this goal by a certain time, they have to be disciplined, and they have to recognize that this is what I need to do in order to get there. So I won't stick on this slide for much longer because I have quite a few other slides to go to, but are there any questions on this, or can I move on? Because I'm going to leave a question and answer session, so I don't want to take too many questions, but if there's a burning question, I'll answer it.
Nope, we're all good for questions.
Okay, great. So move on here. So saving for future education. This is Very important, because I believe that education is very important. I know from firsthand experience that it has helped me to become more blessed financially, because it has opened up so many doors. And if I did not necessarily save for my education or for my offspring's education, it wouldn't have opened certain opportunities for her. So things like an RESP, Registered Educational Savings Plan, so many people are utilizing this benefit because they recognize that it's a great way in which you can put money into the plan and the government matches a portion of it. And so I'll be talking a bit about that in the next few minutes. So the contribution limit maximum is 50,000. So there's a lifetime maximum of 50,000 that can go into an RESP. And the government matches this 20% of this, the contributions for persons who are under 18 years old. So if your child is under the age of 18, I want to say specifically 17, up to age 17, the government matches this by 20%, up to a maximum you get of 2,500 for the CESG. And interest that is accumulates over time in the RESP is tax-free until it's withdrawn. So that's a great thing to recognize, that it grows tax-free. The plan closes after the 36th year. So the first year in which it's opened, you must close the plan after 36 years. So if the child doesn't use the plan, because sometimes things happen, child changes their mind, they decide, I don't want to go back to school, I want to just work full time, or whatever the case may be, and they never ever go back, the plan has to be collapsed and you can take the funds out. There are two types. You have the individual RESP and you have the family RESP. The individual RESP, as the name suggests, is for one child, and it can be set up by anyone. So it can be set up by a friend, a family member. Anyone can set up an individual RESP plan. The family RESP plan, however, is meant for people with multiple children who are related by blood or marriage or through adoption. So parents can set up the plan, or grandparents, but there must be some type of blood relation there. An aunt can set up, say, a family plan. It has to be an individual plan then for that particular child. Otherwise, it has to be the parent or the grandparent. There's a maximum lifetime grant of $7,200 per child, and essentially for each child, that means that each child has access up to $7,200 that you can have in the family plan. If the child does not go to school, as I mentioned before, then the money can go back to the person who opened the plan, which is called the subscriber. For persons who continue school after high school, the money may be paid out of the RESP, and it's known as an EAP. This is taxed in the hands of the student. So it's important to remember that once it comes out of the plan, it is taxed. Interest earned is taxed as accumulated income payment, or otherwise known as AIP, and the money contributed is returned tax-free, but any earnings is taxed. So what that means is the money that is contributed is not taxed, only the interest that is earned is taxed. And you can transfer the earnings to your personal RESP, or your personal RRSP, or your spouse's RSP to reduce taxes. That's in the case that the child doesn't use the benefit and it's returned to you. I don't know if anybody had questions, but I'm going to just move along because in the interest of time. The tools to protect income and leave a lasting legacy. So there are certain tools that I would have mentioned in my book, Overcome Lack and Step into Abundance. It talks about insurance. Insurance is an integral part of any financial plan. And I'm so glad I found that out years ago, because if it wasn't for insurance, there are certain things that I wouldn't have been able to accomplish. which is a way to increase savings, is a way to build an immediate estate. It protects against financial hardship. I know of persons who, if it wasn't for that insurance policy, they don't know how they would have buried their mother. They don't know how they would have been pay off the mortgage. They don't know how they would have been able to sleep at night. Insurance really works. And for every bad story you hear about insurance, because yes, people have bad experiences, and usually it's because of something that may not have been done or understood in the beginning. And I'm not going to really belabor the point, but that it really works. And it really can help in the event of a death, risk of injury, and sickness. So things like knowing of a person who perfectly young, didn't have any underlying illnesses, and one day slipped and fell, wiped out their entire. They realized that just a fall could have caused them such emotional and financial hardship, wiped them out completely. And if they only had insurance. And the sad thing about this is, and I spoke about it in my book, the sad thing about this particular story was that the person had an advisor that continuously would ask them, don't you want to take out an additional policy? It would be beneficial. You know, you have young children, your wife is not really, you know, working that, you know, it's not in a high income type of, she was like a PSW or something like that. And he refused, said, no, I don't need it. I'm good. I got my group coverage. I'm great. And unfortunately for him, he didn't have adequate coverage. The group, yes, had coverage, but not adequate coverage. And that thing, they lost their home. They, you know, their children were impacted. The emotional turmoil, it was really, really tragic. Could have been avoided. And it's something that happens every single day. Things like insurance, critical illness insurance, disability income insurance. Right now, I have a friend that she had insurance. She had insurance, just knew the importance of it, but was advised not to get disability or critical illness insurance. And you know what happened to her? She almost died because she slipped. I don't know, slip and falls tend to be very, very common. And she was out of it for like 2 weeks in terms of being in a coma, that type of thing. And looking back at it, she said, no, if I can get this coverage, I am going to get it because I see the value of it. And this is somebody that saves. This is a saver. This is somebody who believes in insurance, but she just didn't have everything, because you have different types of insurance. As I've outlined here, you have the critical illness, you have the disability income, which is really important, especially for persons who are self-employed. She was someone that was self-employed, and she did not have something as simple as type of insurance that would have paid her income. And she said, Diana, it has wiped me almost completely. Has her own home and, you know, does everything the right way, because now she has to be drawing from her savings, and that is savings for her retirement. So I'm just trying to say, please, if you can, if you haven't thought about it, consider it. Even something, a small policy, consider it, because it does make a difference. Critical illness is there to pay a lump sum in the event you become diagnosed. Now, cancer is the #1 cause of death in Canada. #1 cause of death. And a lot of people have dread diseases known as stroke and heart disease. I think 1 year the study showed that 65% of people under 45 were having strokes. No, that is significant. So a lot of people are getting critical illness insurance because they're seeing firsthand what it can do. It can wipe out their savings. So really, I can't stress it enough. It's important to look at insurance as a means of protecting your asset, your income, and also to leave a lasting legacy, because from day one, it allows you to have certain benefits. And I'm going to go into some of the benefits now. Things like peace of mind. It gives you that peace of mind of knowing that you are protected against any eventualities like death, injury, sickness. and it allows for a solid source of savings. Like I said, there's some insurance that can provide investment returns. And if you want to know more about that, just contact me and I'll be happy to provide you with a wide range of options. As a broker, I do the shopping around for you. When you see me, it's complimentary. There's no upfront fees other than getting personalized attention, and you're able to get something that is customized to fit your unique circumstance. It's also a source of long-term savings because it helps to also offset taxation, estate taxation, which is something that if you're not careful, it can really wreak havoc with your savings. So insurance helps to offset that, and it can provide a source of retirement income, believe it or not. It helps to protect your dignity as well, because for that family, when I think about that family that I mentioned in my book, their dignity was stripped. They had to move back in with his parents. Their credit was shot. They didn't have they went from having good credit to bad credit, and there's so many things. They lost their home, and what else? Just knowing that he wasn't able to work anymore because he had a really serious, I think it was a stroke or something like that. So things like protecting your dignity, insurance can help with that. Having access to certain types of care, and I talk about if you have like diagnosed with a specific type of cancer that can only be treated, let's say in the US, it allows for you. I've known of policies where it pays for you and your nurse and a family member to go to fly private to this special hospital to make sure that you get the possible, and insurance can help you pay for that. Keep the dignity that you're accustomed to having. Insurance can help you to overall leave a lasting legacy through providing an estate, because right away, once you purchase a policy, you build an automatic estate. Remember I talked about in the beginning, having assets and having liabilities. Well, an insurance policy is considered an asset because you're building right away, you're building an estate. And so many wealthy families, if they're honest, they will say, you know what, because my granddad took out a policy for and left me as a beneficiary, as his grandchild, I was able to have $1 million. You know, there are so many stories like that, but they don't necessarily tell you that. You know, insurance is something that can help you leave a lasting legacy. And think about it, how many people can save $1 million? But you can put aside something every month towards $1 million policy and leave that for your children or your favorite charity if you don't have kids, or whatever it is that you would like to leave that legacy behind for. And I think overall, I just want to leave on this note that leaving a rich financial legacy is something that everyone should be able to do and access. And it is my hope that by taking a few of these tips, I'm not saying to take all, but a few of these tips, if you haven't been doing them already, implement them in some way, and you'll find that your financial health becomes better, your peace of mind, you have improved peace of mind, and overall your outlook for the future is more positive. So thank you so much for listening to me and for tuning in. And I'll open the floor up now for any questions and or comments.
All right, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you so much. You're welcome.
We currently do not have any questions in the chat or Q&A, but I will ask this. What would your advice be for maybe family members who want to talk to like an elder in their family about getting a will or an insurance policy? Because I know in the Black community, we don't necessarily like to talk about death or things relating to death, but this is something that could help to leave a legacy for the generations that follow. So what would you recommend someone do if they were wanting to start a conversation with their family about these topics?
Great question, Jasmine. Thanks for asking that question. I talk about it in my book. I'm trying to promote the book as well because it's a really simple book that provides a step-by-step guide for anyone who wants to know more about some of these topics that I had discussed today or tonight rather. Having the right conversation is a great place to start. And one of the chapters talk about the type of money conversations to have with our family members or individuals, and specifically spoke about having that conversation with your parent. You know, we call them the sandwich generation, where you're taking care of your parents. So for those persons, it really means sitting down and having an open and honest discussion, and being in a respectful manner, of course, because a lot of times people don't like talking about their finances because it's a sensitive topic. Sometimes they're embarrassed, they might feel as if they're being judged. Well, what do you want to know about what I left in the will, or why do you want to know if I have a will in the first place? Do you want me for my money? Those type of things. So just be respectful, but have the conversation. It is very important to have the conversation, because I can't tell you how many times I've had clients walk through my door and they're like, I don't know where the will is. I don't know where this is. I don't know where this document is. I'm just totally overwhelmed. And this could have been avoided by just having a simple conversation. Mom, dad, or whoever, I need to know where certain things are, because at the end of the day, you're getting older now. And in the event that something should happen, I really want to be able to help. And I don't want this burden, because at the end of the day, it will become a burden to the loved ones left behind if there's nothing in place. And there's certain places that offer free will preparation, things like a power of attorney and a healthcare directive, which is important, especially if you find yourself in a situation where you become incapacitated due to illness or injury. It happens quite often where you may slip and fall, or because you've heard of cases where persons caught COVID-19 and they never woke up. They just stayed in a coma and died. So it's important to have these conversations so that in the event of something catastrophic happening, they know where the will is, they know who the executor is, they know who the power of attorneys are, they know where certain documents are. Okay, I'll answer that question in a moment. And they know where certain documents are. Let me just stop sharing.
Oh, I did it for you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
They know where some certain documents are, and they're able to have a better way of figuring out how to clean up certain things, especially as it relates to the estate. So I think, just to make sure I answer your question, having an open and frank discussion, being sensitive to the person, being respectful, because as I said, it's a sensitive topic for anyone. Just think about it, especially if things aren't necessarily where they would have wanted it to be. They may be embarrassed to admit that they have certain debts or what have you, but just explain that, mom, dad, if I don't know these things, I can't help you, or I can't get the help, so that you won't have these issues, or we won't have any bigger issues come down the road. So it's important to have the conversation, but have it in a respectful and open manner. And sometimes you need help to have that conversation. It could be just sitting down with a trusted friend or family member, or going to having a financial advisor. Say, mom, we're going to go to the bank, or we're going to go and see this person who I really believe could help us. Let's get on track with putting certain things in place. Some of the companies I work for have benefits, which I mentioned earlier, can help you put the will in place, power of attorney, and the healthcare directive without having to pay extra because you're a member, or you have a policy with them.
Yeah, I actually agree. My parents are in their 70s, and I've often broached the subject, like, what will happen? What's the plan? When you get older, or other
Yes.
issues happen. And at this point, they're not having the conversation. So as you're saying that, I feel like we need to have a session on how do we support our elders, because definitely it's a conversation that they need to have.
Yeah.
You said something else that struck me, even in critical life insurance. I know I have critical life, and it's
Mhm.
It's
That's
a car
great.
payment every single month. No, it's expensive. It's a car payment every month.
Yes.
I got it. I'm a psychotherapist, so I'm used to families who have experienced, sudden losses or, not able to work. And so they're learning through their experience really, told me that it's important to have that. But there are benefits to having, like you said, life insurance and critical life and whole life. My plan, for example, like all of my premiums that I pay into it, I'll get it back at a certain time, right? That
Exactly.
the other, yeah.
Exactly. I
Any other
didn't mention
benefit
that
to
before,
having it?
but yes, it's a means of saving as well. So if you never ever made a claim, it's returnable, it's refundable to you. And there's some plans that I have right now which if you even do make a claim on it, you can claim again. Because there's some plans that collapse after you make one claim. But
Right.
I do sell a plan where it allows you to actually still make a claim after that first claim.
It's phenomenal. So I mean, like I said, it's expensive. It can be expensive, but
Yes, it
I
can
mean,
be.
really and truly, as you shared, it's very beneficial to have that. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thanks for that. I also want to say that there's some people out there that are put off by the cost of insurance because the truth is it can be costly. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna lie. That is why it's best to start from early. It's really ridiculous some of the prices for kids. I mean, like cents, just a few dollars. Some people insure their kids from as young as birth.
Right.
So and it's because they probably saw what it did for their family, or someone in their family who did the same thing, and they recognize that, hey, if I can get my child insured from birth or as early as possible, I can protect them in case they get diagnosed and become in uninsurable, I should say. Although I do have a policy for everyone, even people who have cancer and are turned down, I do have a policy for anyone, but it can get pretty pricey the older the one gets. But one of the things that we're seeing now is a trend towards lower premiums or making it more affordable for people to get critical illness coverage. So because they're added it can be added as a rider on, say, a term
Right.
policy, for instance. And we're willing to work with you in terms of what's affordable. So like I said, it always makes sense to sit down and ask a question, because not until you ask questions you will know. Sometimes people think, oh, I can't afford it, it's not for me, it wouldn't make sense. But you'd be surprised, we could get your rider on for maybe even $25,000, which is something. It can do something, you just never know. It
So
can
rider
probably
is what? Is it an addition
is
to?
rider, sorry, I'm speaking as if
I know.
everybody knows. So it's a supplemental benefit. They're known as riders. So for instance, on a policy we could tack on a supplemental benefit such as critical illness, disability, child supplemental benefits. So for instance, if you have 5 children and you wanted to make sure all of them were insured, you can put on a child rider, and the child rider covers all the children for a flat fee, sometimes as low as $5. You can
Wow.
get all your 5 kids covered, which means that if something happens to either one of those children, you will get, whether it be $25,000. Not that you can't put a price on a child, you can't, you just definitely can't, but it can help with, funeral expenses, which can be pretty high.
Yeah.
Average funeral these days is about $12,000 to $50,000 or more, depends on, what you want. So yeah, it does make sense to ask a question, get a free consultation. As I said, you don't pay to get advice from me, but because I'm paid really well by these companies, and it's just my pleasure to really give people information. So that's why I'm here tonight, because I think it makes sense to, the more we educate and the more we learn, is the more stronger we become as a people. And I think if many of us had the type of information that I had, going into the industry, it really opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and I was able to put things in place from early, especially for my daughter. So my daughters. So I know the importance of having education. With regards to someone who's asking about the book, my book is available on Amazon, and it's on Amazon. It's actually retailing for $24.99 US, but you can get it on my website at dianamyrie.com for as low as $24.99 Canadian. and that's sorry, my voice is going. It's actually, I'm offering a special now. So if you visit my website, dynamyrie.com, and you click on the link for I think there's a special for GTA, but I'm extending that special to anyone. Just click on the link and it's for $24.99, but it usually retails for $33.
My question was, we would love to purchase a book and offer a prize for someone who's here. And I'm just,
awesome.
yes,
Thank
that was my
you.
question too. So I have this app that I used to kind of pick a name. So maybe if you're interested in a book, you want to raise your hand, I'll put your name in this app thing, and whoever wins gets a free book.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Everyone is a winner.
All right, I found it. I did want to ask you another question. In terms of finding an investor, I know you said that you're also available, but what if someone, wants to kind of look around? Where do you find investors? Where do they come from?
Investors or
financial advisors?
Oh, okay. So obviously I have to promote myself, but if you want to look around, of course, you can search, there are different financial institutions that have advisors, namely the banks, insurance companies. You just need to walk into a company and say, I need to speak to a financial advisor. Sometimes it's good to get references, because everyone is different, right? And I'm not going to say this person is better than the other, but sometimes you have to you can ask questions. For instance, when you speak to the person, how long have you been in the industry? Are you continuously studying? Just to gauge what that person's exposure to certain instances are. Because, and I'm not saying you can't give everyone a chance, but me personally, I want to know that the person I'm speaking to is knowledgeable and experienced. And yeah, so those are things to ask. But yeah, for certain, any financial institution, most banks or insurance companies have financial advisors that are ready and willing to offer you that advice. But if you want certain levels of experience and knowledge, someone who continuously trains and all of that, is always good to do your homework. Maybe talk to a friend and say, how is Tom? Is Tom a good person? Nothing like a good, because you wouldn't want to go to any doctor either. So I always like an advisor, so because it's very important what we do, and it's always wise to do your research when looking at someone's background. But everyone has to start from somewhere. So I'm not saying don't see an advisor because they just started out. You might be surprised they may be the one better than the person that's been in there for years, because they have a different knowledge, right? So it's just a personal thing.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's all my questions. You want to hear who the winner is? Can the winner
Yes.
please send me an email at info@kajengafamily.org? And Jasmine, if you can type it in the chat for me, that would be great. Drum roll, please. This was actually really fair. I put it in this app and it worked.
Oh, I hope I can get the name of the app after. It's very exciting.
It's very exciting. I know. I'm just like prolonging it. Ms. Jessica won the draw, so I will be sending you a book.
Yay!
Get your address.
Yay! Congrats, Jessica. This was really awesome. I know I stopped sharing my screen, but can I share it again?
Yeah, of course.
So there was a couple other slides.
Mm-hmm.
Are we still recording? Yes, great.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna go back here. So here's some helpful resources. I provided the links here for persons who wanted to get more information on, let's say, the RESPs. They're available. The information I gathered came directly, well, most of it came from the CRA website. There's also the SSQ website. SSQ is a company that I work with. that provided information related to the RSPs and the tax-free savings accounts. And also my book, as I said, it's available on Amazon, or you can get it on my website at dianamyrie.com. And these are just some of the companies I work with. I have an access to a powerful network of carriers. So like I said, as a broker, what I do, I don't just work for one company. I source the best possible package for you, customized for your needs. And these are just some of the companies. I work with several others as well. And last but not least, just my contacts, how to reach out to me if you wish to. You can reach out to me at diana.myrie@allclearpartners.com. As I mentioned, I'm a managing partner with All Clear Partners, Inc. And we have excellent services available for persons who are looking to start their financial plan, set up your savings, investments, emergency funds. If you want to try to, stabilize your debt, we help with that as well, a multitude of things. My contact number is 647-674-5806 for anyone who wants to reach out by text, or you can give me a call. And I also do coaching and other workshops, and I'm available for speaking events, even though my voice is pretty much gone right now. You can reach out to me at info@dianamyrie.com. And again, you can visit my website, dianamyrie.com, for other information that, other information that you would find useful. I write articles on financial topics, and I also have my book available for anyone who wants to purchase it directly from me. Just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for tuning in, and I hope it was very informative and useful information. And if nothing else, if you took nothing else away, I just want you to have a plan and try to, work with someone who's a professional to get you from point A to point B, because it can be done. I just think you just have to believe that it can be done, and that it takes discipline, because I'm not going to lie, it's not always easy. Especially when there are mitigating circumstances like, what we're all going through right now. But try and, put something in place and stick to it. All right. Thank you so much again, and have a great night, everyone. And
Thank you so much for coming. It was a pleasure. It was very informative. I learned so much today, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I'm so glad to hear that. Thanks.
And thank you everyone for attending tonight. We really appreciated you coming out and supporting Kujenga and Diana as well. And we hope you have a wonderful evening.
Awesome. Thank you. Take care.